Power? I hardly know her. Sun Tzu. Ancient proverbs noting the very essence of power are more relevant today than ever before, especially for gamers. We're all on a quest for power. We're hungry for the next moment we can finally say to our boys, holy shit, dude, this is OP. But not all overpoweredness is created equally. The intervention rifle in Modern Warfare 2 was OP in the right hands. Every new League champ that comes out is straight up imbalanced on release, even if you have the brains of a jungle main. But why? Sometimes it really is just a matter of overtuned numbers that make them arbitrarily bigger than other numbers. But most of the time, it's because of how many mechanics in a game interact with those numbers. You can see this in both of the previous examples. In Modern Warfare 2, if the intervention didn't have good attachments that complemented its strengths and shored up its weaknesses, like aim down sight speed, it'd be clunky at best, only good for camping in the corner of a map like a soy boy. In League of Legends, we all hate Zillion when he gets enough cooldown reduction to keep the AD carry alive, even when they're running it down mid, allowing the rest of the team to catch up and get a good engagement because of the downtime of the revival animation specifically. Simply giving a few seconds of preparation can turn an entire fight. So what if the attachments in Call of Duty were poorly designed and simply boosted damage numbers arbitrarily higher instead of providing depth to your choices? What if there were no items in League that provided cooldown reduction? Well, that kind of shallowness would give you gearing systems like Skyrim, Diablo 4, Horizon Zero Dawn. But it's a complicated matter as to exactly why that's the case. So let's get into it. Imagine yourself back on the playground playing a little bit of rock, paper, scissors. A little Rochambeau. One of the simplest games in the world is also one of the most enjoyable for two reasons. One, each player has a choice to make. They have an agency and no one to blame but themselves for losing. Two, there are an innumerable number of mechanics within the game of rock, paper, scissors that have everything to do with those three choices. What kind of person am I playing against today? A confident rock? A careful paper? A cunning scissor? How am I feeling today, and what would I normally be seen as in my opponent's mind? As in, usually I play paper because I'm a big old puss. But I feel reckless today because I just deranked in Valorant. Choice is nothing without mechanics that make those choices mean something more or less than every other choice available. Let's look at weapon choices in the Souls game, Elden Ring. Dozens of choices to choose from, but are the mechanics that those choices interact with deep enough to warrant having more than a rock, paper, scissors amount? Let's focus on weapon choices specifically. There are basically 30 different types of weapons, not to mention how many variations exist within those weapon types. But should there be this many? Are there significant enough differences between them? Let's zoom in more on just the ranged dexterity weapons in light bows, bows, great bows, and crossbows. Light bows allow for a mobile playstyle at a range, which is a deadly combination in a game so stingy with combative movement. Bows give higher damage at range than light bows do, but without extra movement. A great support choice to help set up kills before going in with a main weapon. Great bows deal massive damage at a range, costing you precious time and movement as the trade-off. Finally, crossbows reward players with forethought that prepare for fights well beforehand, with a quick fire preloaded before the fight actually commences, saving precious in-fight time. So yes, these are all very different choices worthy of being in the game, and they all interact with nuanced mechanics of the game that make the player feel good about choosing one of them over the other ones that complement their own style of play. Each one's uniquely different, and each lacking something that the other ones excel in, which actually leads us into the next section of good gear in games, which is trade-offs. If you're tall, on average, you'll die younger. If you're shorter and a guy, you'll have a rough time in the Western dating markets. RIP to my short kings out there. But they'll have more chances at love because they'll be living longer. By having one benefit, you lose another. By taking on a handicap, you gain a specific advantage. Let's look at unique items in Path of Exile, and specifically two classic chess pieces that have been coveted since the game first released, Calm's Heart and Shavron's Wrappings. Both are build enabling in different ways, but you lose a lot in return for the unique, very specific overpoweredness they offer. With Calm's Heart, your offensive capabilities in most cases is severely diminished for greater defensiveness. Hardcore players rejoice. With Shavron's Wrappings, the greatest weakness of the barrier mechanic in that game is rendered inert, giving rise to a whole subset of builds utilizing low life mechanics that are incredibly strong offensively. But there are other weaknesses of the barrier mechanic that still need to be shored up, so in the meantime, you're pretty squishy. And I know it's not called barrier. I just wanted to simplify. I know it's called energy. Like, I've played a lot. I've played a lot. Whatever. If unique or legendary gear in a game doesn't offer effects that can't be found anywhere else, it simply shouldn't exist. And the trade-off for using that gear needs to have complementary options in a skill tree or more gear or strategy that makes those interesting pieces of gear viable. But if the devs don't give us those options straight up, they have to give us the tools to make them ourselves through customization. Some very, let's say, divisive people have said some things to me in regard to my race before. You all look the same to me. which always makes me laugh my ass off, because sometimes we kind of do. Like, it hold on, because if you saw me and my relatives, a bunch of bald black men, all in like slightly different shades because we spend different amounts of time in the sun, all lined up like a lotion commercial, like, shit can get confusing sometimes. So, like, let's be real. I want you, yes, you, to put yourselves in the shoes of a racially ignorant individual so that what I'm about to say makes as much sense as possible. All you Twisting Blades rogues, you Bone Spear Necros, you Tempest Roar Druids, you Ice Shard Sorks, you are barbarians even in the game? You all look the same to me. It's no fault of your own. You didn't choose Twisting Blades Rogue. You had no control over it because there's nothing you can change about how the gear in the game of Diablo 4 complements Twisting Blades better than any other skill in the entire game. And all right after you get one aspect. If other skills in the game had S tier aspects that customized the skill in a way that doubled and in some circumstances tripled their effectiveness, the game would be in a much better state. There are some slept on uniques and aspects in Diablo 4, but to get those online takes a whole lot of respecking and gear sifting through. That's just a hassle no one wants to go through more than they have to, which is one time. There's fine-ish customization in Diablo 4, but it's so inconvenient that for the vast majority of the player base, which is not a big number, it might as well not exist, which is the exact opposite for games like the Call of Duty series. If we hadn't been looking at like the same attachments, scopes, magazines, stocks every year for the past 15 years, we'd say it's a good system. In a vacuum, it really is a good customization system. The more complicated attachments are just gated behind experience, which is to the player's benefit in a pre-microtransaction era. And you're able to get long-range snipers to make mid-range quickfires, some machine guns to be accurate without aiming, reload speed so shotguns are less cumbersome. Imagine in Elden Ring if you could make great bows not require like being set up on the ground or make them be able to be shot off of horseback. BOP. That would be sick. Sick as fuck. And that's why in terms of customization, Call of Duty has a better gearing system than Elden Ring, but I know, hot take. But Elden Ring definitely takes the cake when it comes to choice, as there's not much difference between the submachine guns, the snipers, the shotguns in Call of Duty. They're mostly just visual preferences rather than actual choices. But what about when you combine a sidearm with your sniper, a light bow with your katanas? You get combinations, and lots of them. If you've ever played with Legos before, you know what the essence of combination is. A bunch of slightly different yet distinct pieces coming together to create a work of art that couldn't have existed without each of those pieces building on one another that the same piece repeatedly used would be unable to accomplish. That's why you buy burgers and fries, combine peanut butter with jelly, because they're better together than as individuals. But all the individual parts of a combination need to be working towards one vision. One dream that's greater than the sum. In its simplest form, you have the classic pistol with sniper combination. The pistol covers up most of the weaknesses of the sniper, and the sniper covers up most of the weaknesses of the pistol. In its most complex form, you have this build created by Pohx Kappa in the game of Path of Exile.
The most complicated build I have ever played in Path of Exile. It's just really weird and really unique, and takes 11 keystones on the nearby enemies have lightning resistance equal to yours. Corrupted Soul doesn't work for us. Eternal Youth kinda works for us, but not really. Everlasting Sacrifice is useless for us. Immortal Ambition gives us over, and then we get Volpact, which doubles our leech, but then gets halved by Eternal. Divine Flesh gives 50% of LE damage taken as chaos. Tempered by War with the Muhaxawaddle Machination Shield, you literally do not take cold or lightning damage. So we have to run Tempered by War via Lethal Pride. You cannot use things like LE Equilibrium, you cannot use Exposure, you cannot use things that reduce enemy res, you cannot use Conductivity unless you're conducting your own face, in which case you're lowering your lightning res, which then increases the damage you deal because mobs match your lightning res, right? Makes sense? Skyforths gives us reduced reservation of skills, which is fantastic for our petrified blood, along with making it so we have no life regen, which we have already countered. Stun threshold is based on 500% of your mana. Agnostic is not considered life regeneration. It is considered life recovery. Mind over matter is, a natural pick. Mana nodes give us essentially damage, then getting an additional 10% damage taken from mana. Watcher's Eye, permanent ailment immunity, and Leech, illuminated devotion, arcane surge. Pain attunement. If you notice, I'm running an anomalous petrified blood with 44% quality. So if you know anything about math, a Shaper Beam I couldn't face tank, with better gear I could face tank, but that's not really a hit that degens, that's a straight up degen. Petrified blood, reduced reservation, with a level 4 enhance and an anomalous arrogance for this, with an enlighten as well. If you are running petrified blood with agnostic, triggers agnostic to be permanently on, because agnostic is trying to heal my life pool, but it cannot heal my life pool because of the way petrified blood works. Make sense?
Yeah, I understand. It makes perfect sense. I don't know about anyone else. Yes, it makes sense. And that's not even the full build. I cut it short because I knew it was going to get detracted and really specific and impossible to understand. Here's a simplified version of what you just heard. Step 1. 1 plus 1 equals 2, but only if 2 plus 2 equals 4. So we make 2 plus 2 equal the letter F instead, and then that means 1 plus 1 equals whatever the we want it to equal. Step 2. Repeat step 1 12 more times with different numbers. Brain.exe, S-crash. But the more complex the customization gets, there's got to be luck involved in getting all those pieces of gear within a certain amount of time so you can actually play a certain build, right? Right. Where most games, it's just a matter of time before you unlock a new gun by ranking up in Call of Duty, or however long it takes to walk to a Dragon Priest in Skyrim, where their mask will always be able to be looted upon their death. In some games, you have no idea what you're gonna get. Unless... Luck and determinism both have their place in games. Fortnite is a mix of both. Call of Duty is all determinism. The lottery is all luck. But why gamblers keep returning is the feeling of eventuality that sometime soon they have to win because it's statistically impossible to lose so much. But that's not true in reality. I probably played close to 3,000 hours of Diablo 2 in my lifetime and never not once dropped the Zod rune. If I just keep playing, it'll eventually drop, right? Wrong.
Is wrong. A very clear fact.
I have no control over its drop rate. It's pure luck. I could play an hour every day for the rest of my life and still never drop it. And that's actually more likely statistically than me dropping it in the same circumstance, by the way. I did the math. But what if I could boost my drop rate chances so I could play with gear I'd never be able to play with otherwise? That after killing Diablo 5,000 times, it'd be a guaranteed drop on the 5,000th attempt. Or make the chance higher than 1 in several million, so that statistically, it would drop on the 5,000th attempt, but could drop earlier or later. Which would you choose? Which would I choose? I wouldn't choose either. I'd just quit the game. I'd stop trying and go for something else, or play a different game, Lamau. You think I'll waste 20 years farming for a Zod rune? No. Let's review. Significant choices present. Those choices have trade-offs. You can customize those choices mechanically. Combine choices to compile on one another multiplicatively and not just additively. And you have enough control over whether or not choices are presented to you at all. The way these would be utilized in game design differ from game to game. Of course, there's no one design fits all type idea here, but as a philosophy, that's what makes good gear in games. Thank you for watching.